Every time we went in for a night medevac to go in to get the wounded troops out of the jungles at night, that was the scariest experience that I have ever had in my life.
I joined the Army in 1997, peace. So I'd actually had 4 years of peace.
Oh my God, another plane has just hit.
That's 4 years of peace and 17 of not peace.
I flew 210 combat missions. I got hit 27 times. I never got shot down. I never lost an airplane.
I distinctly remember one night writing an assessment after a series of raids. This is organized. This is an insurgency.
I'm Mike Brock. I'm a retired Marine Colonel. I served 26 years. I'm a veteran of Vietnam, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and Somalia.
Here's a language that could be devised that nobody speaks. We could use it as a code.
A barricaded shooter that just shot an RPG at him.
That was September 11th. And it lit something inside of me.
The code that was developed for the word hill was Tlint-Da-Tsa. Tlint-Da-Tsa in Navajo means sick horse. It was then tested in actual battle. 1st Marine Division landed on the beaches of Guadalcanal.
I tell you what, it was the Wild West. I mean, every time we left the wire, there was always a threat.
I don't think anybody going to any war really knows what it's going to be like until they get there.
It was kind of a wild time there one morning, shooting at 100 yards with artillery, rapid fire with howitzers.
That was the absolute peak of my time in the A-10.
At that point, it was heavy combat. I said, I'm Jim Horsley. Here's my orders. I'm checking in. He says, welcome to the Blue Angels. There's a locker in there. Go put your stuff in there and get a blue flight suit.
It took everything in my mental makeup and descend into that hellhole.
The missions that I was supporting initially turned into strike missions, so we were penetrating way into Iraq.
In this epic battle, a total of 17 medals of honor, 70 Navy crosses, plus many distinguished service crosses were awarded for the campaign, the most of a single battle in U.S. military history.
2 Silver Stars, 6 Distinguished Flying Crosses, and 22 Air Medals.
We need to tell that story. Kids today need to understand why things that happened 80 years ago is important to remember and talk about.
All right. How's everybody doing?
Good evening.
Welcome, everybody. We're really glad to be here. My name is not Cliff Brummels. I've got the wrong title on here. Hold on a second. My name is Bradley Lanfear. I am one of the directors here at American Warriors, and we've also got my esteemed colleague here. Want to give yourself an intro?
Hey guys, my name is Cody Real, also director, producer, and cinematographer on American Warriors.
So we are an independent nonprofit production company. It's hard to say where we're based out of because we're actually spread out across the country here. So Cody, where are you at?
I'm based out of Sisters, Oregon. I've been living here since 2006, but my main range of work is Central Oregon area and expanding out throughout the state of Oregon.
And I am located in East Texas, town of Tyler. Anybody from Tyler? But so right now we're a small team. Our producer, Warren, was not able to join us today. He had an unfortunate family emergency. So we do want to keep him in our thoughts and prayers at this time. But so Warren, he's the originator of American Warriors. He's the guy who started this whole project and then ended up bringing on myself. And a couple months later, we brought on Cody because we needed the extra manpower. And so we just want to talk a little bit about what it is that we're doing, the heart behind it, and where we're going in the future. So our purpose is to tell the stories of veterans. We want to honor everybody who has served. We're trying to collect as many biographies as possible over the course of this project. We're not looking for anything in particular. We've got people who are combat veterans, people who are not combat veterans, who have served in stateside stations. One of the questions that comes up a lot is, what branch did I serve in? And the question is, actually, I'm not a veteran. Cody and I, neither one of us actually are veterans ourselves, but we both come from backgrounds relating, with family members who served. My own dad was a Vietnam era veteran. He was in the Air Force, stationed in Taiwan. And so, I definitely grew up in that environment, but I ended up a filmmaker instead. And it's a huge honor to be doing these stories. Cody, how'd you get into this?
Well, I come from a military family as well. My dad was 11 years Air Force. My brother was 5 years Air Force in Afghanistan. And then both my grandparents were Army veterans. My one grandpa, my mother's father, was actually in the Chosin Reservoir during the Korean War. So a rich family history in the military. I wanted to serve, but as a senior in high school, I was diagnosed with a condition that made me ineligible. And this is kind of a way for me to serve those who have served.
So let's talk a little bit just about our approach, how we do this. So Cody and I, like I said, I'm here in Texas, Cody's in Oregon, and we are literally the only members of the actual production team at American Warriors. So when Cody's filming an episode, he's working completely alone. And when I'm filming an episode, it's, again, completely alone. And I feel really good about what we've been able to create over the last 16 months. This channel, we only started on Veterans Day in 2021. So that's like 16 months that we've been doing these stories. And the amount of content that we've created and the quality of it is something that honestly blows me away every time. What are your thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, it's, well, I tell people we're A to Z production. We're the ones who produce. We find these guys, we call them guys or gals, we give them a call, we tell them about the idea, we set up a time, we go, we film it, we set up, we light, we do everything on our own. And then we come back with loads of footage, and then we have to also create the story out of it. So what's unique about us is that we really are, from just beginning to end, everything is pretty much on us, which is sometimes a benefit and also sometimes feels like a curse. But it is a lot on the plate, but it's good to kind of have a hand in every area of the production. But there are days I wish I had 2 or 3 other people to help.
Cody and I, we both have a stack of hats that we wear because, most productions, they have producer, director, cinematographer, camera operator, sound guys, the whole gamut that goes into production. Whereas we're literally just 2 solo filmmakers and we do this. So, kind of the heart behind it is we want these stories to preserve the history of servicemen and women. One of the things I like to say is that it's not for you, it's for your kids. I just recently, I had a conversation with a lady who I was interviewing. She had served in the Army and she was a stateside nurse, and she didn't feel like her story was interesting. And I told her exactly what I said a moment ago. My dad was a Vietnam veteran. He wasn't a combat vet, but I wish that I knew more about his service and other family members who served. And I think a lot of people have a similar story where they have a family member who served, but they don't know much about what they did. And how awesome would it be if every veteran's story got told, so that nobody had to say that anymore? Oh yeah, my uncle served, but I don't know what he did. We think it's really important to be preserving these. Right, Cody?
Absolutely. I've had a lot of similar stories. Before I came on to American Warriors, I did something called War Stories at a local TV station. Same idea, just shorter version weekly. And I heard those stories a lot. Families who didn't know. One in particular here in Sisters, he was a World War II veteran. His name was Mel Elder. He passed away a couple years ago. But we're sitting down doing his interview, and I'd only known him for about 20 minutes. And he starts to share his story in the Navy. And off to my right, his daughter's sitting off camera, and I kind of hear her sniffling like she's crying. And she told me after the interview, she said, "I've never heard those stories my entire life." And I asked Mel, I said, "Why did you share those with me? You barely even know me." He says, "Well, I was trying to protect my family from these hard stories." But he says, "I've never really had anybody actually sit down and say, I want to hear your story. I want to hear what you're about." He says, "Nobody's ever really done that to me." And that was a pretty big eye opener of why it's important to do these and why I continue to do them.
So, sorry, I'm trying to check on our first guest who was here a moment ago, and now I don't see him, so I'm just checking on him. So one of the things that we're going to be doing here, we're going to be bringing on a couple of the guests, a couple of the veterans that we have interviewed in recent times, and actually one of our very first veterans that we interviewed when this program first started. We're going to be showing some clips from those shows. We're going to be showing some moments that were impactful, and then hearing from these folks about what it meant to them to be sharing these stories on camera. Cody and I, we both hear a lot of times, when we ask someone, "Hey, would you allow us to interview you and tell your story?" A lot of veterans don't want to talk about it, and for obvious reasons. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of memories that people don't want to relive. We completely understand that. We also feel, though, that it's important to talk about it and to let the public know what our service members have sacrificed, and honor that. And that's what this is all about. So before we go too far and bring on our first guest, we've got a couple of minutes here. Cody, you want to talk a little bit about that first clip and that little behind the scenes clip?
Yes, if I'm thinking about the right clip here. Is this the most recent one I sent you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this clip was just an experimental intro to a recent story I just shot. And it's just kind of a way of breaking down what they call the fourth wall, which is in your video, kind of seeing the cameras and the guys who make the video. So you see a little bit behind the scenes of setting up, kind of what it looks like, and very much a one-man band production. So take a look.
So you can talk through this a little bit if you want.
Yeah, I'll make sure there's no echo. This was our fourth take, actually, to get this right. You can't quite see all the furniture that's been pushed up against the wall to make room for our interview. Interior decorating is a real job, or a real thing to our job.
My name is Sam Moyers, and my story starts in 1939 in Elmira, New York.
So yeah, super simple, nothing fancy, very much a one-man band approach. Those shots of the cameras were a last-minute experimental idea to see if it looked cool. And that's kind of the blessing in disguise of a one-man band, is that there's a lot of leeway to experiment in these stories. So when you watch our stories on YouTube channel, you'll see multiple ways of introducing a character and sequences throughout. And that's what Bradley and I really try to do, is just try to keep it fresh with our own creative styles, our own cinematography, perspectives on things. And that's what makes it fun.
Absolutely. I think that was just a beautifully well done sequence, and I was really glad that you shared that with us just this morning, I think.
Yeah,
Or
last night.
Last night. So we're going to bring on our first guest here, but he's not here yet. So we're gonna hopefully he'll join us again in a few minutes. So we're gonna move on to our next guest in the lineup. So this is gonna be Navy veteran Lyle Hicks. So Lyle was the first veteran that we actually interviewed back in I think it was probably October or so of 2021, and so that was my first introduction to this. It was the first long form video project that I had actually done before. And it was very much a whole new experience for me to do this kind of a story, because I came from a background in commercial work, and it blew me away. It got me really excited. So first we're going to play a little clip, and then we're going to hear from Lyle. So here we go.
We took on Marines and their gear and headed to Vietnam to evacuate refugees. We had no idea what we were going to find. We came in and anchored, not knowing still what we were going to see or how it was going to go. And pretty soon a boat shows up and we took on our first refugees. The word seemed to get out, and before we knew it, we were inundated with boats. And for 2 days, we took on refugees. We ended up with about 4,500 on board. The NVA was coming in from the north. The Viet Cong was coming in from the west. And pretty much had them trapped there. And so we were trying to get as many of them out as we could before they got there. It was very difficult to see. You saw a lot of panic and fear in their eyes. It was hard. We would go down and to feed them, and they would rush you because they hadn't eaten, obviously, and to try to get that organized, to try to give them food and drink. And 2 days in, the NVA took over the base of Cam Ranh Bay, and they fired a shell over the bow of one of our ships and told us to get out of the water, and we were told directly from Washington to leave. And so we left, and as we left, in fact, the NVA tanks were on the cliff pointed at us. And we left the guys bopping up and down in the water, waving at us, thinking we were going to come back, and we weren't. I found out later that most of those people were slaughtered, and that was what affected me the most. It was heart-wrenching. I was very angry. I went to the navigator and told him I was going to tell the story. I was going to write a letter to the bulletin and say what was really happening. And he said, no, you're not. In fact, the information you have is top secret, and you're not going to divulge it to your fellow shipmates either.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Hey, how you doing, Lyle? Welcome.
Good. Thank you.
Hey, Lyle.
Hey, Cody.
So, Lyle, thanks so much for coming on today. Can you just share with us a little bit, what was it like for you telling your story on camera?
Well, it's not an easy thing to do, and there's a lot of reasons for that. First off, it's personal, and you're opening yourself up, and you're not knowing whether the person you're talking to is going to really understand what you're trying to say. And I I guess secondly, in certain ways, it's a corporate story. Also, there were 500 or so other sailors aboard my ship. I wasn't the only one that went through that experience. And so when you're telling that story, you want to make sure you're telling the story for them also.
I remember when we were filming your interview, your daughter was there, and she made some comments that, she was watching you, share these stories in your interview, and she made the comment that these are things that she had never heard about. So, what kind of comments like that and other things have you heard?
Well, I hear that a lot in other stories also, and through the Band of Brothers, which kind of brought all of this along. Yeah, we're tight. I mean, it's a story that, first off, like I said, is very personal, and it's hard to share it. It's hard to open yourself up. The war was not a popular war. There's a lot of reasons, but it's not an easy thing to do. But I do, and have heard from others that once they have, and I know for myself that I think my children and my friends understood me a little bit better afterwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you think that it opened any doors for, a new level of relationship with your own family?
Somewhat. There's things that they'll never understand totally because they had to be there, But I think, and when we first broadcast it, my wife and my grandson watched it with me, and I hope that they saw me in a different light afterwards.
So your story has actually gone to some interesting places in the time since then, and it's been shown in some venues that are kind of cool. So you sent me a clip just this morning that kind of got me interested, and I'm going to pull that up here real quick. I didn't get a chance to add it to our playlist, but you can talk a little bit about this if you want to. I think I misplaced it. Well, so your video got shown at...
We took on Marines and their gear and headed to Vietnam to evacuate refugees. We had no idea what we were going to find.
Don't you love technology?
Yeah, it's great. So your story got shown in a high school gymnasium, which is pretty cool. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Well, it was a total surprise and total shock, to be honest with you. And it was, they talked me into coming into this thing. What it is. Okay, if you take a step back, every year the local high school has honored veterans in their school right around Veterans Day. It all started a few years back with Bob Maxwell, the Medal of Honor recipient, and the principal had reached out to me, and he knew I knew a lot of veterans, and he said, can you come up to the school because we want to have a special thing for Bob Maxwell? And so I talked a bunch of guys into coming up, and we were going to show these kids how we back ourselves up. And instead they honored us and brought us in with a bunch of, like, a couple thousand screaming kids clapping and the tears streaming down our face. And it was pretty incredible. Well, ever since then, they've done something similar. And they'll have the gymnasium, and we'll be down in the gym part of the gymnasium. The kids will be all on the side. This year it was supposed to be there was a building that we were supposed to dedicate for Bob Maxwell, and they'd asked me to bring a banner to present this banner, and instead they showed my video, and then did a few things afterwards, and it was overwhelming to say the least. The thought or the feelings behind it are hard to explain. I didn't know whether how people would take it. I was, I guess, a little bit embarrassed when it popped up because I didn't feel worthy of it, and I was able to call out my grandkids, which was pretty cool, and embarrass them. And I remember my grandson the next day. I said, "Did I embarrass you?" And he goes, "Yeah, but it was a good embarrassment because the guys kept slapping me on the back saying, 'That's your grandpa.'" And so I guess it went off okay, but it wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm. Cody, you got any questions?
Well, Lyle, do you think this is important for other veterans to do as well, to share their story?
Very important. I've been involved in this from the get-go. When the war stories first started, they knew that I knew a lot of veterans, and so I was asked to help line up, and we lined up. In fact, the first veteran we lined up in war stories was Bob Shotwell. It was First Wave Omaha Beach, who was a personal friend. And we knew he knew media. He had been on the radio and whatnot, and we knew he'd do well. And I was helping line up a few other guys, and I went to a buddy that I knew his story would be really good. Mark Wurgis was his name. He was a Marine, Purple Heart. And he refused, and I kind of prodded him a little bit, and he looked at me and he said, "You first." I said, "What?" He said, "You first. You show you do it, I'll do it." And so indeed, I went back to Warren then and said, "Okay, I'm ready." And we did my initial story, and Mark did his, and Warren told me that after that, the guys were coming to him. He didn't have to really chase after him. I think like you said before, it's an important thing for the families to have. Now my families can, if they can always go back and look at that video or show the video and say, "Hey, that's my grandpa, that's my dad," whatever.
Yeah. Well, I know it meant a lot to us to hear you recount all of that, all those memories, and
as you remember, it was kind of hard for me to watch it the first time. When you took me into your office and showed it to me, and that was a bit of a struggle. You did an excellent job.
I try to do that with as many of the veterans that I interview as possible, get to bring them to my office and let them watch it before it goes live. And almost every single time, it's always hard for them to watch, but it's always very rewarding, I guess, validating that they're also very appreciative that the story gets told in a way that is respectful and shows the humanity of the story, not just the mechanics of the story. So,
absolutely.
All right, Lyle, thank you so much for coming on and joining us. Thank you for your service, and we look forward to staying in touch with you in the future.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Lyle.
Have a good evening. All right, so our other guest is missing. Don't know where he is. So we're just going to forge ahead here. So one of the things that
while we're trying to get him, I have a kind of story along those lines that Lyle was talking about. I could share if we're waiting.
Sure.
When he referred to War Stories, for those of you who aren't aware, War Stories is the TV station segment I mentioned before that Warren, American Warriors producer, had started like 6 years ago. It was really kind of the seed and the birthplace of what's now become American Warriors. But anyways, when I was shooting War Stories, my last one, before I left the TV station, this guy emailed me. His name was Dennis, and he said he was in Vietnam, and I want to tell my story. And I said, sure, what's your address? So we picked a date. I met up with him. Had no idea, who he was, his background, or what he'd been through. And we set up, we sat down, we did his interview, and found out he had survived 2 different helicopter crashes in Vietnam. He was a crew chief. At one point, he had carried dead babies through the Huey to forward hospital units. They found out the kids were dead. And just some extremely traumatizing stories that he went through. And at the end, I kind of asked him, I was like, why did you reach out to me and want to share that? That was rough. And he says, for the first time in the 50, 60 years since it happened, he says, I felt like it's time to share my story. And it was also his first step towards PTSD recovery, was actually sharing it. He says, nobody else but my wife has ever heard this before. And, he trusted me with that story, and we put it on TV the next Monday, and he messaged me a really nice message and said that he felt like he took the first step towards healing. We don't do these stories for the healing part, but it's kind of just a byproduct of what we do. It's, it's an honor to be able to be responsible for that, for people to trust you with it. So kind of like Lyle was saying, it's good. It's, it's good for us, it's good for the world, but it's also good for the veterans as well who are going through stuff.
Yeah. I remember during another interview that I did a few months ago with a veteran named Jason Galusha, he made the statement that talking through trauma is what's called exposure therapy, where you force yourself to relive it and to process those emotions, because it forces your psyche and your mind to be able to deal with it, instead of just trying to shut it down, where it's just constantly there underneath and affecting you in a way that you're not able to really address. So yeah, I'm glad that we're able to provide an outlet for those emotions for people to be able to share.
For sure. And I know you've had this, and I've had it too. A lot of veterans who've cried on us and on stories. And yeah, it's a big responsibility to hold that story and then tell it properly.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to go on to our next guest here. We're going to start with another clip. So we're going to be introducing Mr. Regan Hawthorne. So Regan Hawthorne is a U.S. Army paratrooper from the 82nd Airborne. And he's also, Andrew was speaking about him earlier, he is the descendant of a Navajo code talker. So I met him last summer at a event for the National Navajo Code Talkers Day. And it was an amazing event, and I was humbled and honored to be there. And here, I knew a little bit of the history of the code talkers before that event, but not nearly as much as there is to learn about them. And it was an amazing story. And Regan went above and beyond the call of duty to make it possible for us, for our team to be there and capture the story. So we're just going to play a short clip here, and then we're going to chat with Mr. Regan.
And I come and I see names that reflect a personality. I didn't know all of them personally, but there's quite a few here that I have known personally. And as I stand here and I look at these names, I can say to you, thank you. Roy Hawthorne, my father. I see George Moss, my uncle. I see Raymond Smith, Sr., my uncle. And I see extended relations in a lot of these names. And I see the 6 Marine Corps divisions in which these men served, and represented across the entire Navajo Nation, a landmass larger than the state of West Virginia. And it settled in on me that this is why we're here today, because of what they did, who they are, and what they represent. Thank you, men. Thank you.
Regan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing
can't hear
well. Can you hear me now?
There we are. Now I can hear
Got
you.
me? Got me there. Well, I got movement.
Yep, we got you. Okay. Great. So, Regan, tell us a little bit about the Code Talkers and that event that we were there covering.
A little bit about the Code Talk. Bradley, Cody, thanks a lot for having me on here. Kind of give me a warm up to what's coming next on the next hour, but we'll catch up on that in just a minute. But really, American Warrior, pretty awesome stuff there. I think I was counting earlier. You guys got 200 and some odd videos on there, and I've seen about 3 of them. But we're trying to do a little bit more and just follow you guys pretty well. But you spoke, Bradley, to the moment where you and I met here in Gallup back in August of last year, and yeah, it was a fun time. It was a fun time. We did a lot of things. You guys turned a hotel conference room into an excellent sound and video production studio. Real good work there, and I really, really appreciate the work that you did. That video has gone to a lot of different places. And talking about the Code Talkers, the segment that is imprinted upon my mind right now is when we talked about the names on the wall, on the wall of this conference room. Those 400 and some odd names about the Code Talkers who served in the Marine Corps during World War II, and what they did, the things that they did with their language to really stymie the enemy and to confound the enemy. So much so that the code itself was never broken. And I don't want to try to relive the whole experience here, but I want to build on what you're saying there. I can turn around here over my shoulder and look at these names, and again point out there's a few there that I know. One is my father. 2 or 3 others are my uncles, and there's some extended relationships there on the wall. And I have to kind of associate that, Bradley, with that granite wall there in Washington, D.C. And when I go there, that's impactful. It's emotional, and it's stirring. And so this poster that we have here with these 400 and some odd names, 420 plus names of Navajo men who served in World War II as Navajo Code Talkers. When I look at that, that's pretty similar to me because there's relationship there. And I think on what these men did, trying to, again, go back with me to the Vietnam Wall, the Vietnam Memorial. When you go there, you can feel, you can sense some emotion and some of what they presented themselves for. And it's no different with me and many of our Navajo people here when we talk about these Code Talkers, what they did. We look at these names and we can see the pictures of their faces in our mind's eye, and we know that what they did was extreme. It was miraculous what those 420 plus men did some 80 years ago when they took their heart language and transformed it from a tender, sacred, conversational language, transformed it into a military weapon. So much so that it was a code that was never broken. And when you, Bradley and Cody, when you get together to tell the story of veterans, I wish that you could have traveled back in time with us and told 420 other stories. The quality of work that I see in the productions that you all are doing there is fantastic, and it really brings home some of the things that maybe we take for granted every day. So the idea of looking at names on a wall. There's some portraits behind me here of a few gentlemen that were code talkers, and you know we have only 3 of those men still alive today. So when I talk about 80 years ago, what these guys did as 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds, well, we've always, as America, we've always taken the best of the best. We've always taken our young men and our young women and put them in harm's way. In 1942, 1943, 1944, these 17-year-olds left their family sheep flocks. They left their family's woodpile. These guys were responsible for bringing firewood into the home to heat and to cook. These guys were responsible for going down to the creek and hauling the water that was used to drink and cook and wash with. And they left all that to go halfway around the world. It was an adventure. It was an adventure to them because at that time, Navajo land was so far removed from what America really understood. When they went away for one purpose. They went away to protect the homeland. And when we talk about the names on the wall, we've got to remember, not unlike those 58,000 plus on that granite slab there in Washington, these 420 gave of themselves to protect freedom. So that's where I go when I talk about these names on the wall. That's where I go when I talk about Navajo code talkers. And when I think about American warriors and the you guys coming out here and ringing my phone and chasing me down and saying, we need a studio. And I'll say, well, that's great. I got a room. Let's find something and see what we can do. Again, you guys coming into this conference room and setting it up and doing the lighting and throwing up the cloth over here and over there and doing just the right close-up shot. I don't know. It took us hour and a half, Bradley? Was that about what it was? Is that about fair?
I don't. I think it was probably a lot longer than that, actually. But so here, I have a question for you here. So can you talk just for a moment about what's happening today? Because that event that we came there to cover, that was for the groundbreaking of the Navajo Code Talkers Museum. So can you tell us a little bit about where that stands currently right now and what's happening and what that's going to be about?
We could use up the rest of your time. I think you got about 18 or 17 or 18 minutes left, but
I think we got about 3 minutes left, and then we got to bring in our last guest.
I'm going to use every bit of it. Yeah.
Okay.
This is excellent. And Navajo Code Talkers Museum. This has been a kick the can down the road type of vision for the Navajo people for years and years and years. When you came out in August, we were celebrating National Navajo Code Talkers Day. That's a national holiday, and there's not a lot of people that know that. August 14th, 1982 was the first observance of that through President Reagan's order. So we were observing National Navajo Code Talkers Day last year, and as a part of that, the Navajo Code Talker Museum Board of Directors created, organized, and executed a groundbreaking ceremony for a 45,000 square foot world-class museum to bring to America the Navajo story, weaving the Code Talkers into the Navajo story, because we are convinced that America needs to know more about this. America needs to know about the Code Talkers of the Navajo Code Talkers and what they did. So we're moving forward. We have acreage there. We broke ground on the acreage. We're in the process now of soliciting project management groups. We're in the process of finalizing funding details for it. Bradley, Cody, and everybody else that's listening, we need $50 million minimum budget. So that's what's going on now.
And that's one of the things that inadvertently, in the course of what American Warriors has been doing, we have found ourselves coming alongside other veterans organizations it started out by just by telling the biographies of individuals, which is always going to be the heart of what we're doing. But we find ourselves telling the stories of individuals who are still actively working in the veteran community today. So the Code Talkers Museum was, one of those partnerships that we got to stumble into, and which it's an amazing thing that we got to help tell that story.
Well, and telling that story with video is a big part of what we anticipate for the museum, also, Bradley. And I know that the two other videos that you guys were able to produce while you were out here are going to go a long way in that. But to have this desire, this vision on the part of American warriors, this is something indeed that needs to be told. This is something indeed that children, adults need to be reminded that 80 plus years ago, this is what happened.
Where can people go to find out more information about the museum?
About the museum, they can go to National Navajo Code Talkers Museum.org. National Navajo Code Talkers Museum.org. And we're rebuilding a good site there. It'll be dynamite here in the next couple of days. Right now it's up. It's got some contact information. Go there, leave us a tag, and we'll get back to you.
Great. And so to see more about the film that we created, you can check out AmericanWarriors.com and search for Code Talkers and watch that amazing piece of history right there. Regan, thanks so much for coming on. It's great to hear from you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. You take care.
Thanks, Regan.
All right. So lastly, well, not quite lastly, Cody, you want to talk a little bit more about some of the other veterans organizations that you have worked with in Oregon?
Yeah, they sorry about that. They vary widely. Central Oregon Veterans Outreach is a homeless veterans outreach. I did a story on a guy named David Naraka, retired Green Beret, who now works with homeless people. I work with Honor Flight of Central Oregon. Honor Flight is actually a national network, but the local hub, Central Oregon. I've been a part of them for a couple of years now, and they just put me on the board of directors as a photographer, and I make the photo books at the end of the trips. They've been a big asset. Lots of veterans there going to DC to see the memorials that were built in their honor. World War II, Korea, and Vietnam veterans. Not too many World War II left, so mostly Korea and Vietnam. And I'll be going back this year for a third time to document that trip. Band of Brothers is a big one. Like Lyle Hicks is a member of that. And he's really been instrumental in getting us references to other veterans in the community to tell stories. He's really an unsung, humble hero in that regard. He's directed so many people to me and Bradley and Warren for stories that we just super, super thankful for him. Yeah, and talk about Camp V. That's down there in Texas. That's not something I've done with, but that's a big thing that you've worked with, Bradley. Tell us a little bit about Camp V.
Yeah. So Camp V is an organization here in Tyler. And so one of the things that most people, here, a couple of statistics here for you. Tyler, Texas, the greater East Texas area has the second highest population of veterans in the country. But as of 2017, it had the fewest amount of resources for veterans. And there was literally nothing in the Tyler area. So Camp V got formed, and Camp V is a community assisting military personnel and veterans. And so their goal was to become the biggest hub for veterans resources in East Texas. And in just a few years since they started, they have seen incredible growth, and the amount of services that they're able to provide for veterans is amazing. And so our partnership with them has just been phenomenal, where a veteran comes through their doors to get help with whatever it is that they might need help with. And then they're also referring them to us, to me, to share their stories and talk about their service and, preserve that history for all people to be able to appreciate. So we're really thankful to Camp V, what they're doing and the partnership that we have with them. And we're looking for more organizations like these because these are organizations that are, made up of individuals who served, and they have their own individual stories, and they're still doing things today to continue that story moving forward and continuing to help other veterans. And it's just an honor to be part of all that. So lastly here, we want to bring on another veteran who anybody watching the live stream has already seen, but Andrew Appleton, who is the host of the ParadeDeck live stream here. And he came on, or I met him last summer at the same time when I met Regan Hawthorne at the Code Talkers event. And so Andrew, he is also working together with us. Andrew, are you there? I don't see you. Maybe he's not there. His camera's still on. He's just not in front of it.
Maybe he's not that impressed after all.
Oh, there he is. He's back. Okay.
Hey,
here's Andrew.
Sorry about that.
No problem. All right. So, yeah, Andrew has been a big help to us. One of the areas that American Warriors has been struggling with is getting ourselves out there because we're a very small team and we don't have somebody full-time promoting our content. Cody and I, we're pretty much tapped out on creating the content. So Andrew stepped in and he's going to help us get these stories in front of more eyeballs, which is what it's all about. So Andrew, thanks so much for what you're doing, and talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. Well, hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You get okay. All right. All right. Well, first, great job. I don't think these are working. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
Is that better? Okay, that's better. Okay, sorry. This has been a long day, I will tell you, Bradley and Cody. So I had my good camera that worked perfectly. So I'm looking at my picture now, like, that's not so great. Cody, you got an amazing camera. So that's clear, crystal.
Cinematographer.
So exactly. Anyway, yeah, thank you for coming on today. Thank you for being so involved, especially with the Navajo Nation and with Regan and all the veterans. So I just, like I said earlier, when I saw your content and I saw what you did with General Bellin and with Code Talker, Peter McDonald and with Regan, I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are amazing. They have such amazing content. And so, and I did mention earlier, you guys do have a lot of subscribers on your YouTube channel, but there is that point where we plateau, and without, starting to put, more gas in the tank, you kind of just stall out. And unfortunately, it's not a problem that you guys just have. It's kind of a problem across the board with social media. So one of the things, I won't let the cat out of the bag, but we're looking at is multiple ways to use your content. Regan just mentioned, being able to bring that into a museum environment. So, Bradley and I have had some really good conversations about this, but that content is so, I won't say valuable. I don't want to mean it valuable monetarily, even though it is. It's valuable in the history that it contains. And if we can take that history and, even just take it off of YouTube a little bit and get it in different venues, then I think more people are going to begin to see it. And so that's kind of what the vision I have. And Bradley, thank you for taking, I guess, my guidance or my suggestion of writing that first blog article behind the scenes. And I think repeating that, a lot of things I tell our creators and influencers is they just have one channel, and which is great, but sometimes you need multiple channels. We need content in text form, that is going to be pulling in SEO or search engine optimization. We need to have, the shorts and the reels, and we need to be able to get backlinks from other organizations that will promote this content. And so easier said than done, but you got to have those multiple distribution points, or you really silo yourself. And so, yeah, I'm excited to continue to work with you and with Warren And I think we will really start seeing a difference. And I think today helped. I think today is really going to get a lot of eyeballs on you. And I'm so happy that Stars and Stripes were involved, because obviously they're a historical type of organization. And when you go to their website, you're seeing similar content. You're seeing veteran stories on their media, their digital media. So I think it wouldn't be a big stretch to be able to connect the dots there and see how you can contribute, to the millions of veterans that should be seeing your content. So hope that answers your question. I can ramble on more. So
yeah, we're just super grateful for that relationship. We're really
Absolutely.
excited for the future, and we're just hoping that this is going to help us to be able to tell more stories and bigger stories than what we've been able to do just within our driving radius.
It's time to travel.
This time to travel. And I just want to point this out. This costs money. This costs money. I mean, you're looking at high-end, professional production, editing, and all the things that I'm not really technical in all those terms, but it costs money. And, and I'm not going to speak for you guys necessarily, but, this would be a good opportunity for sponsors to step in, people that have some vested interest in this content, whether it's licensing it or distribution, but I think that is where brands can align with American Warriors. A, you've got an amazing name. 2, you tell an amazing story. 3, you're able to capture amazing guests. And so we need to align that with brands that could leverage that, whether it's, to help them move forward in their products or services, or like Cody said, get in front of more veterans. And so we've got Veterans Day coming up. I know it's a little bit down the road, and I know we've talked about doing some type of event. So if you're listening tonight, I would challenge you, if you're a company, an organization, and you would like to do something spectacular, and I'll just challenge you single-handedly here. Now, I've had some help. I'm putting on a 24-hour live stream. So if I can do this, then there's an organization out there that can come up with a really cool, innovative idea to celebrate our veterans in maybe a slightly different way on November 11th. So we'll just put that challenge out there, and we'll see what we get.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Well, thanks so much, Andrew. Thank you, Cody. And thank you, everybody watching. It's been an honor to be here.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys, thanks so much. I'll see you guys later. So I'll take it over.